Hey there, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Today we're going to talk a little bit about an introduction to chemical reactions. All right. Eventually, we're talking about the different types of chemical reactions and how to balance those chemical reactions. But today's just kind of an introduction and bringing up some new vocabulary, being able to identify what is a chemical reaction, what is happening, and some of the big things that are kind of going on with it. So, let's go and get started with it. All right. So right here, I have a chemical reaction. All right, this chemical reaction, all right, is we see kind of two parts. So let's look at what we have. We always kind of have one side of it. We normally have an arrow pointing to another side. When you get into more fancy chemistry, you can see that the arrow can actually point back in the other direction. Either way, it's kind of a starting point and an ending point. So let's look at this one, what we have right here. What we have right here is we have a lithium, right? That's a metal with a non-metal fluorine. They are chemically bonded together, right? And we started here with Br2, that's two bromines. Those are two non-metals. Those would be two covalently bonded together. And then over here, I have that lithium. All right, we've had a little bit of a change. Lithium was with fluorine, but now we have lithium with the bromine. And we end up with two fluorines together. All right. So we kind of had I always like to kind of personify this stuff. We had a rearranging of partners here, friendships, right? We had an ionic bond between lithium and fluorine, and we ended with an ionic bond with lithium and bromine, all right? Or forming lithium bromide. The whole idea of a chemical reaction is about how electrons and atoms can rearrange and interact with each other. That's what a chemical reaction is. It's atoms and energy interacting with each other and sometimes changing. All right? And so what we have here, so let's kind of dissect the parts that we have here before we start talking about some more details. Let's just go with here. All right, we have what we start with. We start with two things. We start with lithium fluoride and we start with bromide. Right? Whatever we start with in a chemical reaction, all right, whatever we call on the one side that we start with, we call these the reactants. So our reactants in this chemical reaction is lithium fluoride and bromine. One lithium with one fluorine, two bromines together. And then we have some sort of interaction going on here, a chemical reaction, and we're ending with something else. What we end with in a chemical reaction are called the products. All right, so we always have the reaction of the reactants to the products, and then we have this little spot right here, this little arrow. We typically call the yield. It's called the yield. So in this case, lithium fluoride and bromide yields lithium bromide and fluoride. All right, so we had a reaction here. We're rearranging molecules here. All right, we're rearranging molecules and changing those chemical bonds between them. That is a chemical reaction. All right, so that's just some basic anatomy talking about reactants and products. But now let's take it to the next step here. All right, and it's something that's very, very fundamental and very, very important for all chemical reactions. It's going to be what we're going forward. All right, it's something you've probably heard of before. It's called the law of the conservation of matter. Think about it, it's about conservation. Apologize. You guys have probably heard this one before. All right, it's this idea that matter cannot be created nor destroyed. I can't destroy or create more stuff in the universe. Primary theory right now is that the universe began a little under 14 billion years ago. The amount of stuff that was there is the same amount of stuff that is today. All right? All the things that make up you existed before you were around. All right? And so the idea is that matter cannot be created or destroyed, but it can be changed, right? Matter cannot be created or destroyed. But can change. That's what we're doing in a chemical reaction. We're changing around the atoms here. All right, all the molecules that make you up existed beforehand. They just might not be with the same relationships they're in now inside your carbons reacting with the hydrogens and oxygens in your body. All right, which means let's look at this chemical reaction we did here. All right, I started out with 1 lithium, 1 fluorine, and 2 bromines. And I ended with 1 lithium, 1 bromine. I started with 2. I ended with 1. And I only started with 1 fluorine, and I ended with 2 fluorines. All right? Which means this is not following the law of conservation of mass. This is literally saying that I started with 2 bromines and then 1 was destroyed. And I started with 1 fluorine and that another one was created. All right? That's not quite the case of what's happening here. All right? So there's something that's going to be added on to, and we're going to go into more depth in a different video, but I want to introduce some terminology. All right? So what we're going to have to do is add something what we call coefficient. All right? A coefficient. And again, we'll go more detail about what a coefficient is in a future video and how we use it to balance these equations. All right? But I'm just kind of bringing it up now just to kind of get us started. All right? So what it's going to say is, okay, I would have to put a number right here to say that I used two lithium fluorides to balance out the 2 that are over there. Which is also tricky because now I'm saying I have 2 lithium fluorides. I also have now 2 lithiums. This is what we call a coefficient. All right? So to balance this out, it's saying now I have 2 lithium, 2 fluorines, but I also started with 2 lithiums. I only ended with 1, so I'm going to have to put a 2 here as well. And any time that there's no number, we assume that there's a 1 here. All right, but we're not going to talk about that one yet. All right, we're going to go in much more depth in a different video because I want to kind of split up this topic here about how we know which coefficient to put where. That's not the conversation right now. The conversation is what is a coefficient? All right, it's a number in front of it and it tells you how many of them there are. So what we are saying, literally this right here, what we have is by saying 2 lithium fluorides, what we're really saying is that we literally have 2 of these guys. It's literally saying I have 2 of them, right? 2 lithium fluorides. So now I have 2 lithiums and 2 fluorines. So that's what a coefficient is, right? Well, I'll show you guys some techniques later about how to know which coefficients to put where, but that's just going to get us started off there because I don't want this video to be too long. So we talked a little bit about the parts of a reaction. We have the reactants, yields, the products. We talked a little bit about what is the law of conservation of matter, can't be created or destroyed. And so because of that, we're going to have to add coefficients that show us that if I start with 2 lithiums, I have to end with 2 lithiums. If I start with 2 bromines, I have to end with 2 bromines. And we can use coefficients to do that. Okay? All right, that's going to be it for this video. Thank you very much for watching. Good luck, and may the science be with you. See ya.